What's going on, guys? Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting with People podcast. I'm your host, Coach Gags, and we got Jordan on the line today. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Awesome. So, this is one of our kind of guests that are going to be part of our Meet Director series for a lot of the RPS meets that we're running. If you guys have been listening for a while, we are kind of working our way towards nationals in 2026 at the training center in Newcastle, Delaware. And I know that we're going to talk about some meets in Kentucky. But before we kind of get into that, just a little bit of your background, who you are, what you got going on, and then how you got into lifting.
I'm 36 years old. I've been powerlifting since I was 23. I started out at a whopping 170 pounds. I bounce between the 220 and the 242 class now. I'm recovering from a torn quad because I was an idiot and took a year and a half off of lifting and thought it'd be a good idea to come back and do two meets within a year. So that was smart. But I think my best all time total in reps was 2105 at 220. And I think in sleeves it was 1967 or 1962, roughly. 2,000 pounds still eludes me to this day, and it makes me very, very sad. Uh, Other than that, we've hosted meets with the USPA, the RP. We started with the RPS after the Millers quit in Kentucky. I didn't have enough
Yeah, so
overall.
really quick, because I think for people that maybe are newer, so were you part of that kind of crew at the time? Did you train with those guys a lot, or did you ever like what was your kind of relationship with the Millers? And if you have any, because I think those were, at least in my opinion, there was like kind of definitely a very like a notable group of people in that region in terms of both hosting competitions as well as competitors themselves. I'm sure like Josh Miller, correct? I think like his total is probably still up there in one of like the top totals for sure. I don't remember if he was like a 23 or 2400 guy, but he was up there at the time. But any kind of experiences that you had with them?
Oh yeah, yeah. The entire Miller family they were some of the nicest people I've ever met. Those were some of the most fun meets I've ever been to, and I have yet to see a crowd
Mm.
get into any meet like the way that the Miller crowds did. And I'm pretty sure Josh Morris is still last I checked. I think he's still number 9 all time.
Josh
And
Morris. I was getting my wires crossed for a second. Sorry.
I went with them to help at the Arnold one year. I think it was the year right before COVID, 2019 or something. And the guy that was running the Arnold thought that Josh was the fourth Miller brother, or the fifth one, because there's four of them. And they're like, no, his name's Morris. Everybody just assumes he's one of us. So it's a common misconception. It was really funny.
Yeah, my wires were a little crossed, and I think we were kind of chatting a little bit off air where like before Shayna got married, I remember I got to see her compete one of the earlier Raw Unities. I want to say it was probably Raw Unity 7. So it was her. I don't know if you ever. Again, I think she got married now recently, but Caitlin Trout, Shayna Ratcliffe. There was like a lightweight duo that was they were hitting world records.
I remember all those people.
I remember at the time, yeah, Caitlin actually did a seminar at a gym in New York. There's some footage. She was great, so she was definitely somebody that was kind of leading the charge for a lot of like the lightweight ladies. And I remember she squatted, I want to say around like just shy of 400 pounds in like the 123s. And it's crazy like what people are doing now. And then you had like the Steffi Cohens and the Mariana Gasparin. I'm probably saying her name wrong, but anyways, she was definitely someone early on that was kind of setting a lot of records. And yeah, she had a great approach to training, and then I know like kind of Brandon Lilly also was kind of rubbing elbows, and I kind of still see him now and then. So in terms of like the training environment and like the competitions, I know you kind of mentioned that the crowd was great. Any other kind of stories that you have in terms of like how the training was, what powerlifting was like back then, and then if there's anything else that you kind of want to add to like
Oh,
that period of time.
fun fact about Caitlin Trout: the first meet that I did, Brandon Lilly hosted a USAPL meet here in Kentucky, and it might have been USPA. I don't remember. Either way, I show up like an idiot. I have no knee sleeves and no belt. Um, Caitlin, in between her attempts, let me borrow her belt and her knee
Wow,
sleeves. That's how small I was as a person.
that's fun.
My first squat was done in that. But I mean, as far as the I would go to the Miller meets as a just to volunteer to help spot and load, just because I enjoyed being in those meets that much. Um, there's just I met so many people through their powerlifting meets that I talk to nowadays. Competed with a lot of people. That was a lot of fun. The shit talking that would go on in the back rooms were some of the funniest things on the planet. And then if you ever got to train with any of the Millers or Josh Morris, you got better even if you didn't really want to. I remember my wife will still tell people this to this day. She got shamed into squatting to depth because of Josh. Uh, she did something. She squatted three something, and he's like, "That'd be real high if it wasn't high. That'd be really cool if it wasn't high as fuck." And like, I would tell her she'd squat. I'd be a little nicer. I'm like, "Hey, that was kind of high," and blah blah. But Mo did not care. If it was high, it was high. So that was kind of what we brought to our meets once, because I mean, the Millers always, if you got a red light from one of the Millers, nobody ever questioned it. You deserved it. And I remember Dusty, I think he gave me a white light for depth one time, and he said he'd been waiting like 5 years to do that. But that was my favorite thing about them, was they held everybody to a standard. And back in the day, I know people said that like the SPF and whatever, everybody squatted high as hell. If it was a Miller meet, but when it was the SPF or when it was the RPS, if you squatted there, 9 out of 10 times everybody knew that you squatted to depth.
Yeah.
Even their meet, the last meet that they did, I know a couple people were like, "Oh, they're probably going to be a little lenient with the judging." Shayna threw more red lights in that last meet than I have seen. I was like, "Oh, good lord, people are bombing all over the place." What a send off! It was. They were fair and consistent, at
Yeah, and
least.
you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that because I know and we don't need to get into the specifics of this because I do believe so for a vast because it's it's always a story of like people certain people don't get along whatever, but I know for a period of time like the RPS and the XPC were like kind of connected, and the RPS was kind of like the pathway to the Arnold, and that was always a premiere, and like I know like we had a lot of people, and it was really cool to see um a lot of people, and still to this day, but it's just it's definitely changed over the years, but in like that between 2015 and 2020, and then in 2020, if you may remember, we had like Julius Maddox, Larry Wheels, and TD Tom Davis. There was some pretty epic lifting. I don't know if you ever met Dominici, someone I was an old training partner with. I know he was very friendly. He was a 900-pound squatter as well, but because I know he was friendly with, I think he might have done one of the live large brawls or something. But anyways, I believe that they were like kind of incorporated. They did some of the judging potentially at the Arnold here and there as well. Because so, anyways, yeah, I thought they were always fair, consistent. It was tough. But really, really quick story because I believe that they were part of the judging crew. So one of my athletes was competing at the Arnold, and he was always like a borderline squatter. And like to your point, so if it was, if they felt like it was above parallel or if it was, it was questionable depth, I thought they were very fair and consistent. But so he misses his opener, he misses his second, and then uh, we see all this kind of security crew starts walking by, and we're like, oh, it's like so Arnold Schwarzenegger is at the XPC, so he's a security guard. So he sits in the front row. And then, so then I'm like, Nick, I'm like, you can't bomb out in front of Arnold, So, anyways, he sinks it. He gets his third attempt, three white lights, boom, and then Arnold's cheering. It was like one of the most memorable things. But it was just really cool. So, anyways, it's just some great memories with those crews, and just like, and I kind of agree that it was one of those things where I felt like they were fair, but like maybe like I said on the stricter side, but compared to like sometimes like you said RPS sometimes gets they're lenient or whatever, but it's it all kind of depends on the meet directors and stuff like that. But yeah, there was some pretty cool times in powerlifting. So kind of fast forward to now, how has things changed in like your own training as you've gotten older? Do you still train with the crew? Like what does that kind of like look like for the people that you're kind of working out with now, and then kind of the people that you're hosting these meets with?
Yeah. Unfortunately, most of the people that I did lift with they don't compete anymore. They've done other stuff now. I had one training partner for the majority of my powerlifting career. His name was Pitt, and that man was the most dedicated training partner I've ever seen in my life. During COVID, I lifted out of my garage. The man lives 2.5 hours away. Twice a week, that man would drive down here and we'd lift together, usually squat and bench. That way, we both had a spotter. And he did that for that entire year of the shutdown and everything. And, if I ever made a trip back in home, I'd stop in, we'd lift there. Um, but that is one of the things I miss the most is the community that we had. Because I mean, back in the day when I lived in Eastern Kentucky, I mean, we'd have 10, 12 people or in the gym on a Saturday all the time. Uh, there for a long time. Me and Pitt were driving down to Iron Mafia, which is like 50 minutes from me, about 2.5 hours from him still. We'd go down there. Now we owned a gym for 3 years. I closed it down, I want to say 3 years ago now. Um, when our lease was ending, they wanted to up our lease and whatever. So I said no.
Right.
But a friend of mine has opened a gym. He's got two locations in Richmond and Winchester now. It's Cage Barbell, and that's where we've been training out of now. Because I tried to train out of my garage again, but with nobody to lift with, it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, I can lift tomorrow. Well, tomorrow never shows up. But Ken's done a really good job at getting people into the gym in Richmond, Winchester, and Winchester is kind of more powerlifting focused. Winch, Winchester's more powerlifting focused. Richmond has like a little mix of CrossFit and strongman and pretty much everything. But there's the people that we can get in Winchester are a really solid community. Everybody's got different schedules and stuff like that, but he'll have like I think they had a lift, they had a deadlift, a spooky deadlift for Halloween, and there was all kinds of kids in there. Everybody was deadlifting and having a good time. So when you can get everybody together on the same time, it's really fun. But for the most part, it's either me and my wife. My wife's basically doing all of my spotting and loading, or well, it's me dragging the kids at the gym with me. And my toddler likes to spot me when I bench. He usually makes it harder than he does. I do have a guy that I work with, and I've trained him and his brother for a couple of years. We'll lift about 2 or 3 times a week now when our schedules align. We work at the corrections, the jail here downtown. But there's a lot of overtime there. So when our schedules align, we like to get our training done at the same time. But yeah, it's not what it used to be, unfortunately, and it seems like the more federations that show up, the more splintered and fractured thing gets. I know the like I said, we've ran RPS meets, we've ran USPA and WRPF meets, and it seemed like every time we would switch due to whatever happened, you would lose one group of people and gain a new faction of people or whatever. The RPS was by far the most fun I had as a meet director. Now, I didn't enjoy hauling monoliths around, and we didn't have enough help to constantly set all the time. So the fact that they let us use combo racks now is a lot easier. But, I mean, as far as like the people and the crowds that would show up for the RPS, that was absolutely fantastic. I miss that a lot.
Yeah, I do think that you bring up a good point about like the combo racks, and that's kind of like something where I kind of always go back and forth with like, should we change with the time? Should we, and my kind of thing, and I have like a little bit of a personal issue with the combo rack because you kind of mentioned the USPA, and this isn't like a knock at any one federation. It's the combo rack, the walked out squat is kind of the preferred way to squat. I'd say even globally at this point, there's certainly pockets of equipped lifting. There's pockets of, raw with wraps with the monolift and, even overseas and stuff. But for by and large, I would say, the combo rack walked out sleeve squat that's the more popular way to do it. And even you could even say even on a power bar, even on a stiff bar, and that's, creates, I was talking with Greeno about, when someone's squatting 800 pounds on a regular power bar, that creates its own problems in terms of safety, in terms of lower back health, hip health, and all these sorts of things. But in the case of a monolith particularly, I always thought having the safety straps, having the ability, if the lifter wants to walk out, and we were kind of talking a little bit off air, where RPS I feel like is the most inclusive in terms of if you want to do equipped lifting, if you want to do raw with wraps, if you want to go naked knees, if you want to bench with your heels down, bench with your heels up. There's just a lot of options, and I think in terms of safety, as you kind of mentioned that you're kind of approaching a 2,000 pound raw total, which is fantastic. When you start to get those upper weights, having a specialty squat bar is going to, feel more stable on your back. Having a specialty deadlift bar, it's going to be a little bit easier on your lower back off the floor, typically, if you know how to use it. And for some of these equipped lifters, I don't know if you've ever seen people like, Jimmy Kolb and stuff like that. Even someone that's benching in a shirt, having a specialty bench bar, that's also going to like reduce the amount of whip, because for these guys that are benching, 6, 7, 800, sometimes 1,000 pounds plus, if you're doing that on a power bar, that could also be very dangerous. If you look at someone like Julius Maddox, I think that actually he would have benefited very well from using one of these specialty bench bars, because you could see like sometimes I think the lockouts got a little bit squirrely
Mhm.
when he was approaching that 800-pound mark. So these are just things in terms of safety, in terms of so like the combo racks are certainly more convenient for the meet director, but in terms of performance and at a high level, it would be kind of nice. And I don't know if this is just like a side thing, but I don't know if you're familiar with some of the ABS competitions, but overseas they have like kind of like this hybrid monolift kind of combo rack contraption where the kind of the bench actually pops into the monolift. So that way you could have the safety of a monolift, you could have the adjustability of the monolift, but also a meet director would only need two or three pieces essentially, versus having three monoliths, three benches. It gets to be kind of challenging. So I'm hoping that that technology comes to overseas to America, but it's something that I've seen in Ireland and some of those regions over there where and I do anyway. So that's just like a side conversation, but it is something where I do think the monolith meets are better. But to your point, yes, it is. It's a little bit less accessible for the meet directors, and more costly. And moving those things around is is a challenge.
I
Um,
had to tear down by myself one time
yeah.
and move it. And oh my god, I was so proud of myself when I because I'm 5'8". I'm not tall. I was standing on a bench taking the thing apart, and like I had it balanced on my shoulders, doing a step down with it, and it was awful, absolutely awful. I swore I'd never do it again.
And before I kind of went on my side tangent about the monolift, so like one of the things that one of the most, I don't know if you remember this particular meet, but I want to say it was maybe 2017-ish time frame, 2016, 2017. The current US Open, I think it was the second one. Because actually a lot of people don't know that the RPS actually was the first US Open, and even Brian Carroll competed in it. But anyways, I think it was the second or third US Open. And it was a really epic showdown between Larry Wheels, Andrew Herbert, and Kevin Oak, and none of those lifters were finished the meet. And then I don't remember Tony Montgomery. Tony Montgomery ended up winning the 242s that year, which was like, he was the one that survived the meet. But anyways, Larry ended up hurting his quad because the spotters didn't grab him. He went a little bit too low. He kind of had to sidestep out of the way, and then the spotters like didn't grab it. Andrew Herbert ended up his elbow ended up like exploding, or his triceps detached. So he hurt, and then Kevin Oak tore his hamstring. So every step of the way, like someone went down in the squat, someone went down in the bench, someone went down in the deadlift, and then Tony Montgomery was. So everyone, it was one of the most epic battles. It ended up being like a flop. It was one of the coolest head to head, because any of those guys could have. And then what ended up happening was, Larry just kept his world record for a while, and I think maybe Jamal or one of those guys might have broken it like years later. And then, but yeah, and then like Larry decided that it was time for him to kind of move up to the 275s, and then he started working towards breaking Stan Efferning's record a year or two later. But yeah, that was kind of like when I decided, I'm like, I'm just I he did another one here and there. He had this epic battle with Dennis Cornelius among others, but that was kind of a turning point for me as a coach. So I was like, yeah, I don't know if I really want to mess with this combo rack stuff too much. And that kind of also had me gravitate a little bit more towards RPS. So in your case, you kind of mentioned about the culture, the energy, like the vibes of RPS. Are there any other things that you're looking to kind of bring to your meets that are going to separate them apart, or just maybe some things from the past that you want to kind of bring back to your region, to your hometown? So what are the things that are going to separate your events from maybe some of the other ones that are out there?
It's not going to be as stuffy of an environment. I don't know a better way to word that other than I care about making sure the lifters have a good time. I know a lot of people are more worried about, oh, I need to get this. I need to make sure the spectators can see this, this, this. You're in a crowd. You have a chair. You can stand and cheer. My duty is to make sure the lifters have a good experience. They've got everything they need to warm up and compete well, and to make sure that they want to come back and do another one. I'm not so worried about. I don't do live streams. I don't. It's hassle. I'm old. I don't feel like dealing with it. If you want to come watch the meet, come watch the meet. I don't charge over $15 for admission, and that's just if it's a really big venue. 9 out of 10 times we do $10. I've gone to meets now where they're charging $20 or $25 for admission, and I want to like cut my toe off just to go home. I don't do an exorbitant meet. For other federations, I'd have to jack my meet prices up to like $150. For the RPS, I do 100. It's not hard. I don't require you to buy a shirt for the meet. If the first two go really well, then by the third meet, I'll look into getting some shirts for everybody. But it's just, I want the lifters to have a good time, and I want the people that they came with to enjoy watching their family members compete. I don't want them to have to worry about, oh, I don't want to stand over here because I'm blocking the live stream camera or, whatever. The judges have their designated places to sit. It's not going to be roped off or whatever, but, the warm-up room is going to be separated from the platform. Platform is going to be separated from the spectators. And another thing, I know a lot of people don't like it, but for bench press, I flip the bench around that way because if someone's benching, these people don't want to look at the back of your head when you're benching. So I'll literally turn the bench and the platform around and kind of angle it. I think it was the USPA Pro Showdown down in Kansas City. They were the first ones that I saw that did this. They would literally just angle the bench press and then
It's a cool viewing experience, and for sure. Yep.
Yeah, you actually get to watch the person bench instead of like watch the bar come down and you're looking at the combo racks or the bench press racks or whatever. I just always thought that looks better. And as long as so instead of having your platform square like this, you kind of angle it and you angle the bench press that way. Even if you are using horse stall mats, the lifter's feet aren't going to slide against the horse stall mats up and down because they're pushing against the rubber. So it actually helps them stop from sliding. But that's my big thing is I'm more worried about making sure the lifter has fun and wants to come back. I don't have a guarantee that spectator over there is going to ever come back and watch another one of my meets. They might just be somebody random. That lifter though, if I give them a good experience, they're going to more than likely want to come back to another one. So that's my main focus and just having fun. My wife always handles all of the microphone and the PA duties at the meets. I don't have a voice for radio or TV, so I throw red or white lights. That's my job, and answer questions. But I want to make sure that everybody's safe, so I always try to make sure. Hell, if I'm short a spotter or a loader, I'll spot and load the entire meet myself if I have to. Doesn't really bother me. But safety and the safety and the happiness of the lifters is my main priority.
Yeah, I think that in this day and age of like again, the American Pro is like probably the best example, right? It's like you got the big screens, the fireworks, and like that's great, I think, for like a national or pro level meet. But I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes some of the newer lifters I've seen get it a little twisted, and they think that like every meet should be like the Super Bowl. And if you're like junior varsity football, you don't get the fireworks. You don't get like, the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, you don't get, the fireworks, the halftime show. So I do think it's really good to kind of make it more about the lifters. And I'm kind of with you. Like if the spectating area is like not as great, but the lifters have a good warm up area, they have a good warm up room, they're getting taken care of. Focus on the lifting, focus on the safety of the lifter and the lifter experience. And I agree. And that's kind of how we like to do our local shows, and then if they have, like I said, we kind of mentioned, for our nationals and stuff, that will kind of kick things up a notch. But again, still with the focus on the actual competition. And yeah, I think with the live stream and stuff, I think it's, there's a time and a place for that. But especially at like a local level event, it's like, come support the local gym, come see the meet in person. Um, Having that sense of community, the human element, the social time afterwards, the dinners afterwards. I think that stuff's really important. And it's, in this day and age where, we're doing so many things digital, having a place where people can kind of come together. And you did kind of mention we're getting busier, we're getting older, we have more responsibilities. So maybe we don't have the opportunity to kind of train with the crew all the time, but maybe we could train with somebody a couple of times a month. Maybe we could do this the same meet together and then kind of have a social afterwards. So it's a really kind of a good way to connect with others, and then you kind of have that shared experience. So for people that are maybe starting out, maybe they're getting ready for their first competition, or maybe they're just getting involved with powerlifting, what advice would you kind of give someone that's kind of new to the sport?
If you have access to older lifters, ask as many questions as humanly possible because, yes, some of them they're not going to be the right answers all the time, but you're going to get an answer. You'll have, if you've got multiple people to talk to, you've got a variety of preferences, opinions. One person might like to compete in the USPA. One person might like to compete over here in the SPF or the RPS, or, everybody has their preference. Like I have, there's a couple people here in Kentucky I know that have competed in pretty much every federation known to man. There's some people who strictly only did RPS meets. There's some people that follow meet directors, or whatever federation their gym is hosting. You know, it if you're new to the sport and you want to get into it, your best bet is just to pick a meet, dive in, and compete. Make a note of what you did like, what you didn't like. Bring that up to some of your friends. See if they've got the same complaints, and if they don't have the same complaints, ask them where they compete, or how they've found ways to fix whatever their problems were. Um, a lot of people say that they don't think they're strong enough to do their first meet. I think my first meet I totaled like 1,100 pounds, maybe 12. You're not your first meet is going to be your starting point. If you wait until you're at your absolute strongest to do your first meet, it's just downhill from there. Why would you want to do that? You want your first meet to be something to look back on and be like, oh, okay, well, I did this there. Well, I've come such a long way from there to this. It's a learning curve, and it takes a while. And if you're young, compete multiple times a year if you've got the opportunity to, 2 to 3 times a year. Competing is a skill. If you didn't compete in sports during high school, and this is kind of new to you, your first meet's going to be overwhelming. You're not going to know when you're supposed to start to warm up, when you're supposed to get ready for your first attempt, where you're supposed to stop warming up, how to make your attempt selection. There's all kinds of videos all over the internet of, suggestions and how-tos and whatever. You can get lost in information. Mm. The best information is to do it and learn from that experience. And then you can kind of build from there. So it's like I think my first meet, I took too long to start warming up. And, oh no, the first meet I did that was really small, had like 11 lifters in it. I'm used to having like 15 to 20 people in the RPS meets per flight. This was 11 people in an entire meet. I didn't know how to warm up for that. I think I was still doing 495 on squats, and they told me I was like 3 out. I didn't even know the flight had started. We're in a convention center. There's no speaker in the back room. There's no nothing. They're like, "Hey, you're 2 or 3 out." I'm like, "Fuck, I'm in wraps." I don't even do 495 in wraps. So I ran out and I took my opener. I went from 495 to 705. That was horrible. It felt awful. But you don't know how to plan for that unless you do it. So now I know ahead of time I'm going to start warming up pretty much the second I get there. And it's just you learn by doing in this sport, unfortunately.
Yeah, a couple of things I want to highlight. I think if you could have some sort of like mentor, some like old wily veteran, I think to learn from, I think that's great. I think that's definitely underutilized. I think that will serve you better than trying to find some junior lifter phenom that's, DM me for coaching, Venmo me for that sort of thing. And that's fine. If you can't find someone in your area, like I said, I do online coaching and, it's a big part of our business. But I think if you could find an in-person crew or find an in-person mentor, at least to kind of get you started. And then kind of like your point too, like, also like besides competing, volunteer at your local meet. You can learn a lot by just like being around other people that are competing, seeing how the flow of the meet is. Um, and you can kind of see like, oh, okay, this person's warming up too fast or this person's warming up too slow. This person's like, why is this person doing sets of five and like wasting energy? You know what I mean? You can kind of pick up on these things. This person is too drank too much caffeine and now they're crashing by the time they get to the deadlift. You kind of pick up on these things the more meets that you are at, and then you can kind of learn, like you said, from experience and also other people's experiences too. So, but I appreciate your time today. So, where can people find you? What are the events that you have coming up? Your socials, all that good stuff.
Thankfully, it's all in one spot. I'm just on Instagram. It's at dadbod220. My link tree link is in my bio. That'll take people to the sign up sheets that I have for the upcoming meets. We post them 1 to 2 at a time. Right now, we have one. It's going to be April 11th in Winchester, Kentucky at Cage Barbell.
Awesome.
That one it's our first RPS meet in a while. Um, so we're looking to do one around April. We're doing that one, and then I think the next one's going to be around the August or September mark, and then we'll probably do something around the beginning of December, so people don't have to worry about traveling for the holidays and such.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, everything's on there, and then the gym that I train at's Cage Barbell, Winchester. That's tagged in all my videos as well, and hopefully I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at all the RPS meets that come back through here again.
Excellent. Again, definitely give Jordan a follow. And if you're in the Kentucky area, please, especially share this out. You can check out Cage Barbell. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It helps other people find us. Until next time, guys, stay strong, and then we'll see you soon.